According to the cloud. Good. We're in business. Okay, folks, I'd love to welcome you to the next session. And we're very fortunate to have Okonny. She's the Chief Data Officer for Employment and Social Development Canada. Right. And she'll be basically presenting on managing data in a large government department. Sorry, we'll just getting myself sorted out here. Okay, for that. Now, Emma is basically the CDO. She's over 23 years of experience in the field of data. She's extensive experience with building the evidence through the development of analytical databases and tools, implementing departmental data reporting and release strategies, as well as data management, data privacy protocols, and with forward-looking policy development and research. She has an educational background in mathematics, computer programming, and public management. And during her time with the Government of Canada, she received several nominations and awards for her leadership and results. She's passionate about helping organizations develop the capabilities required to ethically and intentionally unleash concrete business value from data. So without further ado, Emma, I turn it over to you, and I thank you ever so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, Robert. I think this is my third year here, coming here. So I feel each year I have additional things to share in terms of our data journey at ESDC. So thank you again for inviting me to come and speak. So over the last year, since the last year I was here, we've made considerable progress in our data journey at ESDC. One of the latest breaking updates is that the Chief Data Office is now a branch within Employment and Social Development Canada, and the CDO profile is now at the Assistant Deputy Minister level, which makes me one of the latest Assistant Deputy Ministers in town. So what that does for us is really highlight the importance of data to really enhance services to Canadians. And to our topic today, managing data in a large organization like ESDC is a feat that keeps me awake most of the night, but I really enjoy the challenge, and I'll delve into the presentation. So thanks again, Robert, for organizing this and for inviting me to come and speak. So in this first slide, I always like to speak to the context that we're working in, because for me, we don't do data just because we like doing data. We do data to really meet some of the values and goals of the organization. And for us at Employment and Social Development Canada, our raison d'etre, basically our DNA, is really working to help Canadians live productive and rewarding lives and really improve Canadians' quality of life. And all this is to build a strong and inclusive Canada. And in order for us to do this with data, we need to be able to manage that data well. We need to live within our privacy laws. We need to live within some of the security parameters in the organization. And we also need to ensure that we're doing things in an ethical manner that can really test the transparency of Canadians and really be transparent in terms of everything we do and explain things we do to Canadians in terms of really aligning with some of our core Canadian values. So one of the things I will talk to you about is some of the evolving context that we're facing. Many of you know we went through the pandemic, and we're facing new complexities in our society. So as we look at data, we also look at data from this lens. So on this slide, I list a little bit about ESDC's mandate, our role, for people that don't understand some of what we do. You can also find this on the website, on our website. So this is available on canada.ca. You can reference it, and you can go and dig into some of the documents that we've put out transparently for people to understand some of what we do in the organization. So I started off speaking about the shifting complex. 3 years ago, our context was not the same. I remember when I walked into the role in January 2020, there was no pandemic. I walked into the job, and 3 months later, we faced the pandemic. So when I look back and I look forward to where we're heading and the mandate that we have to deliver, um, Canadians have rising expectations, and they expect government to deliver, in an efficient manner, transparent manner, like I said, and also meet the needs of all Canadians living across this country, regardless of it being a remote area, urban area, our different communities, whether it's on a reserve or any of the communities across this country, the geographical areas, the remote communities. We're expected to deliver and deliver in a very efficient manner that reflects the realities of our Canadian context. So on this slide, I speak to some of the realities that we face. Our colleagues at Statistics Canada released a lot of information on what our population looks like. They've released a lot of information on our shifting context in terms of our demographics. And many of you have seen these publications, but if you haven't, it's extremely interesting to see that the working age population has never been older. So if we expected to leverage data, to manage data, to meet our mandate, we need to understand this context. We're dealing with a population, a large population close to retirement. And for the very first time, Statistics Canada has indicated that we have more people, like 8.3 million people, who were at one time an immigrant, landed immigrant, or permanent resident in Canada. So all these contexts have to play into how we think about data, how we manage data, and how we ensure that we have the pulse of Canada in context in everything we do in our organization. The other thing that we're also facing is the rapidly shifting socioeconomic conditions. As I spoke of before, we started with a pandemic when I walked into the role. We're in a state where we're evolving and trying to ensure that we understand what's happening in the labor market, some of these shifts, and really respond to some of the budget priorities that were announced, in budget 2023. And the budget announcement validated some of the key considerations that we were thinking through in terms of these rapidly shifting situations and conditions. In terms of the complexities and the intersections of risks that we're facing, wars, like we've heard, many of us are aware of the war that's happening, cyber threats, increasing cyber threats, climate change, the crisis external to our borders, but have implications in terms of some of our thinking and our strategic alignment with what's going on around the world. And also really making sure that we're aligned with our IT colleagues as they think through some of these cyber threats. We're in lockstep with privacy, our privacy colleagues, our chief privacy officer, our security officers, just to make sure that we're protecting, some of this data, and we understand the shifting context of technologies. Many of you have heard about generative AI, ChatGPT, extremely popular with many people. But we also need to understand the shifting context around these technologies, the risks that they introduce, as we use these technologies and as we leverage technologies, and some of the implications they may have in terms of how we manage data, how we use data, and really thinking through the impact of these technologies. Technologies like artificial intelligence, will they have implications in terms of how we manage data, how we use data? Do they introduce new risk, to Canadians in terms of how data is used, how data is leveraged, things like data ethics, bias, all these are part of our thinking. And we have a lot of conversations with our privacy colleagues, our legal colleagues, just to make sure that we're staying at the right side of this. I talked about increasing expectations at a very high level before. And one of the things I wanted to emphasize is Canadians expect that we meet their needs in a very fast pace, especially since they're seeing some of these new technologies that are evolving. And we're also registering unprecedented level of demands in several areas across government. So one of the things that we want to ensure remains as a core in everything we do is that we do things in a way that's transparent, in a way that really meets some of our foundational values around privacy, around security, and also around some of the regulations, and the acts, that we're authorized to operate in. So a lot of this shapes some of our thinking, some of our vision around our data strategy, and basically some of the technologies and the processes that we choose to adopt. So, like I said in this presentation, I would touch high level, and I know I did this last year, where I touched high level on our data strategy. I talked about some of the thinking around that and what we were doing. And I will also touch on some of the work we've done around foundational data management principles within the organization. One of the things I like to say is that you can have a strategy document or a data management document on the shelf, but if you don't put it into practice in context of the organization, it doesn't really do anything. So one of the things we've really, really emphasized on is understanding the business context of our organization, the context that are emerging and past context in Canada, to make sure that whatever we do is really aligned, in terms of where we're going as an organization and a country. So I'll touch high level on the data strategy. I spoke to this last year, so you can refer to the last year's recording. So in terms of the vision, one of the things that we really grounded in our data strategy vision is to make sure that we're really building data products, enhancing data products, and really building a culture in the organization that leverages data, to really meet the needs, the core needs of Canadians, to enable policy design, policy development, service delivery, and also report delivery and results reporting. So we've grounded our data strategy in a culture of stewardship. So in terms of how we manage and how we govern the data is grounded in that culture. The culture where we say, for us to be able to do data right, it takes a village. It doesn't just take the chief data office. It takes the entire organization working together and making sure that we understand our core responsibilities and accountabilities around data, bringing in things like data literacy, to make sure that people understand the art of the possible with data and also the risks around data use. Because we deal with data of Canadians, we want to make sure that our foundational principles, are reflected in how we handle data, how we manage data, and how we use data. So we've basically grouped our data strategy into 4 pillars: our foundational data infrastructure, the data governance and trust, data culture and literacy, and data innovation. So under the foundational data infrastructure, that's where you find a lot of things that I'll speak on today. Some of the things I'll speak on today, things around our data foundation platform, some of the work we're doing to really make sure we're wrapping data governance and data management principles around what we do with the foundational data infrastructure, data governance and trust. You'll hear me speak of some of the work we're doing there on stewardship, making sure that we're stewarding the data of Canadians in a way that meets some of the privacy and security boundaries. Some of the work we're doing, in terms of risk mitigation, making sure we're applying the privacy, legal, and ethical lens to what we're doing. And on the data culture and literacy side, we'll talk about things like some of the work we've done on actually rolling out a data literacy program within the organization. Some of our focus on making sure that we're upskilling, reskilling in the workforce, and really connecting with partners, partners within the organization. We have a lot of excellent, talented colleagues all across the organization. And we work hand in hand with them to make sure that we're bringing in the program and policy context into everything we do. some of the work we do with our key stakeholders. I like to call them one of my top partners, Statistics Canada, in making sure that we keep up to date, with some of what's happening in the statistical data world, but also on key areas like, privacy, some of the advances on the privacy side, some of the work on the data science side, on the methodology side, and making sure that we're aligned in terms of some of the priorities in the organization. On the data innovation side, this is where we're really trying to really push on the offensive side, looking at things like artificial intelligence, looking at better ways to automate some of what we do, always keeping humans in the loop, looking at things like advanced analytics, advanced methodological concepts, things like analytics visualization, really pushing the envelope on how we present data so that it's way more palatable to the different audiences that we're working to share data with. And one of the things I wanted to emphasize is that none of the work we do is once and done. It's something that we always come back to in an iterative manner. So we look at data as a journey. It's a journey. It's a journey in us maturing in terms of our culture, in terms of our infrastructure, but always coming back to improve and analyze, and manage some of the issues that might crop up, making sure that we're monitoring, we're communicating in a regular manner across the organization, and also pushing forward on the cultural piece. So I'll jump to the next slide because some of you might be saying, okay, Ima, you spoke last year. Tell me what you've done in the last year. We've done a lot in the last year. Like I said, we've done a lot of things like we have a fully refreshed data strategy that has been approved by our executive committees within the organization. We have put our data lake into execution. So I spoke of it last year. It's in execution now. We got approval to really go and look at how we can start putting some of our pilot data in the cloud. So that was a big achievement because we went through all the security and privacy considerations. We worked very closely with our IT colleagues to make sure that we were doing things in the right way in terms of their processes and their policies. We also launched and have executed, and I might have mentioned this last year, we've executed on our data stewardship network. And we actually have a lot of active projects moving through that data stewardship network. We've established a full data inventory, a data catalog. We've also made sure that we've prioritized very key programs and key data initiatives that we want to move, into fixing some of the issues that we've had and registered in the past. We have fully launched our data literacy program. We just did a survey across the organization to assess the data literacy levels. And we're analyzing those reports, and it will be reported to our executive committee very soon. We launched our data week. That was very exciting. We had over 1,000 people part of that data week. We had people across the organization very engaged in presentations. We brought in some of our counterparts from across government to come and talk about data and some of the really, really amazing things they've done in putting data into context. We have executed on the data policy and we basically called it a departmental policy on information and data. We worked very closely with our information management counterparts in ITV. And that was actually the very first, integrated policy on information and data management that we have been able to work together on in the government of Canada. So that is out and it's being released across the organization. We have put our data science and machine learning platform into production, and we're actually very excited about that because what that does is create a safe and structured place for us to be able to really start looking at how we can use and deploy models in the organization. And the other thing I would say is that we're now looking at how we can enhance our measurements, like how we measure benefit uptake rates across the organization. And some of that work is in keeping with some of the findings that you'll see on our website in terms of the OAG report and our response to the management action plan. And the latest news I had told you about, just breaking in June 12th, effective June 12th, the Chief Data Office becomes its own branch, recognizing the scope and breadth and depth of work we have to do and the work that has to move forward. So I wanted to make sure that you got this view because it gives you a comprehensive view of some of the progress we've made. So not just talking about data, but actually putting data into action across the organization. So one of the things I'll jump into right now is the foundational data infrastructure that I spoke about. You know, I wanted to make sure that you were aware of what I meant when I said foundational data infrastructure. So very often we're very big about generative AI or AI. One of the things I like to say is that if you don't have your data foundation right, especially since we're really dealing with data that impacts and our decisions will impact people, we want to make sure that we have the right data infrastructure and the right pieces to make sure that when we really use this data and leverage this data with advanced technologies and advanced methods, we're doing it in a way that makes sense, you know, and it's done in context. So on this slide, I talk about some of what is in flight right now. And when I say data foundation, I'm talking of things like the data inventory, which really enables that discoverability, you know, because one of the things we heard across the organization when I came into the department was people didn't know where to find data and they didn't really know where the data was. So one of the things we did was really ensure that we enhanced and improved our data inventory to make sure that people could find data and they knew where, who basically was accountable for some of the data sets across the organization. So we worked with people all across the programs, the policy groups, and we now have a good inventory where people can refer to, consult, and they know where the data is. In terms of another piece that we have on the data foundation is our data catalog. And here we have information about the data, so people understand, you know, what exactly we collect, what this information can be used for, and they know where to find, you know, some of the information they need to do their work. In terms of the data lake, this is where we're working to really ensure that we have a place for people to go and explore data, to access data, because oftentimes we were building data silos across the organization. And one of the things we agreed on in terms of the mission and the vision of where we wanted to go with our data strategy was to make sure that we had a more central data ecosystem where people could leverage some of these data sets across the organization. The other piece is the data warehouse, where we use a lot of the data that we're storing in the data warehouse. As some of you might have heard me say in the last presentation, the Benefit Knowledge Hub, where we have data, where we integrate this data, we curate this data, we work with our programs to make sure that this data is presented in context, and people can leverage this to build reports. If you go on ESDC's website, and I think it's on canada.ca, you will actually be able to see some of the data we've published on employment insurance reporting and some of the past SERB reports that basically pull data from our data warehouse. In terms of the data science machine learning platform, this is the piece that really focuses on some of those advanced methods that we want to use in terms of pushing the envelope on using things like machine learning, natural language processing, but doing so in a way that's ethical, that's governed, that's traceable. Because one of the things we've learned through the years is you can build a model and then you're going to have data drift. You're going to have things like data drift. As I said, the context is consistently and constantly shifting. So it will be very important to make sure that you're able to monitor the data, you're able to go back and adjust, and you're able to, in an ongoing basis, maintain those models and analyze the data that's going into the models. So we've made sure that we've built, we're building the platform to enable our data science teams do all that in a way that's safe and really put together. On this slide, it gives you an example of a data foundations use case, because one of the questions we often get is, okay, you're building all this stuff and I'm sitting in a program as a program analyst, how do I actually use it and what are the steps? So we actually built this slide so that people have practical examples, to make sure that they understand the points, the intersection points, because often people will receive requests, for a dashboard or for basically for data points from an executive, and they wanted to understand from a practical standpoint how they could leverage our data foundation platform to be able to, do their work. So this is built with that in mind, in terms of making sure analysts know, for example, where exactly, do I get access to this? How do I get access? So you'll see from points 1 to 3 on this slide, it basically describes how the analyst can get onboarded, into the data platform. And one of the things we wanted to make sure is that we created a way that people understood that they had responsibilities, in terms of how they use the data. So it's not just getting access to the data, but managing some of the data literacy issues in terms of people understanding, their responsibilities in terms of the Privacy Act, their responsibilities in terms of governance, the use of the data, the ethical implications of how we use data. And the other thing we wanted to do also is to ensure that an analyst could also create a space where they could explore, so they could leverage the platform in a safe way to enable them explore the data or do like scenario analysis, which we found was a significant gap in terms of people having a safe place to go and explore some of the data. The other thing is that we have data scientists across the organization, like for example, in our integrity services branch. So one of the things we kept in mind is that the use cases might be different in terms of how people wanted to use the platform. But one of the important things was we wanted to be able to ensure we were documenting different use cases and having an agreement in terms of how people were going to use the platform. So we're working on building the governance into the data foundation platform, because one of the things we've learned is that if you have a governance document separate from how you're conceptualizing and building your infrastructure, sometimes it can go in two different directions. So we wanted to make sure that as we were conceptualizing and building, we were integrating our values around data governance, privacy, and security. So we worked very closely with our different groups, the privacy, IT security groups across the organization, to ensure this was all embedded in our thinking of how we put this into execution. So at the end of the day, when an executive gets a dashboard, if there was a need, for example, to tweak a number or to question a number, there was some degree of traceability in terms of where the data came from and the curation that was done on that data. So all this has been integrated into the thinking around how we build the data foundation platform. And then the other thing is, some of you might be asking, so yes, you have the foundation. What else are you doing? So one of the things we've done is really make sure that we've put forward basically an accountability framework. Because one of the things I often say is that data is not just for data scientists, and it's not just for people sitting in a special office. Data is for everybody across the organization. So one of the things we're trying to push is that people need to understand what those responsibilities and accountabilities are. And then we have the C-suite. So we have a chief information officer, chief data officer, chief client experience officer, chief privacy officer, chief security officer, and they're all bringing perspectives and expertise into how we do data right. So one of the things we wanted to do was ensure that people were clear around the decision rights and the accountabilities attached to all these different levels across the organization, especially at the assistant deputy minister level also in terms of the program. So we've actually built an accountability framework, and our plan is to make sure that people are aware and understand some of these accountabilities. The other thing we've done is we've put out a data governance operating model that just takes some of the key decision-making bodies across the organization, and then we're leveraging them. Because one of the things I've learned is building an isolated data governance body doesn't always work in a large organization because of all the different intersections and the different program contexts that we're dealing with. So one of the things that we're doing is making sure that our work intersects with the key governance bodies as opposed to replicating governance and creating so much burden. Because like I said, our context has shifted. People are extremely busy, resources are scarce. So one of the things we wanted to consider was making sure that we got the right decisions at the right level without putting people into too much of a burden. The other thing we've put in place since I last spoke to you is the Enterprise Data Governance Office. So often in large organizations, there are a lot of things happening across the organization. And then there's an urgency, for example, needing access to data to be able to report on some issue. And what we heard across the organization was that sometimes it was difficult, to get access to this data, people not understanding some of the parameters they needed to know around privacy, around security, and around even having an information sharing agreement to enable access to this data. So we built a data governance office within the chief data office that really works, directly with people in the enterprise to help them access some of this data that could be maybe very sensitive data. So we would look at things like maybe de-identification. We would look at things like maybe stripping off all personal identifiers. And we would work with these teams to help them access that data in a way that was fast and agile and in a robust way while keeping within the law and the frameworks of privacy and security. I talked about the Enterprise Data Stewardship Network. That has been quite successful because we've rolled out on some of the priorities. And one of the things, the lessons learned from that is, like, if you have a big organization, you cannot work in a silo. So one of the things I say is we can't preach data integration, removing data from a silo and not put it into practice in terms of how we do data. So we've been really working on making sure that we're connecting with people working on data or on the program side across the organization and integrating those core contexts into everything we do, which is why we've been able to roll out this Enterprise Data Stewardship Network. In terms of technology and tools, it's always emerging. As you know, right now, the excitement is around generative AI. Tomorrow, we don't know what it will be. So the core is that we've built key pillars in the organization. For example, what we're doing is, what are our core governance and data management pillars around the use of AI, for example, around the use of machine learning? What do we believe are the core principles we always need to stick by? So we're building that into everything we do. Because like I said, governance can't be this separate exercise you do in the corner. It has to be integrated in terms of the everyday operations. If not, it gets left behind when you're moving into quick operations. So as I spoke, high-level view of what the Enterprise Data Governance Office does, it provides guidance. So we have key documents that basically list things like, what are the Government of Canada policies around automated decision making, for example, because we know that our colleagues at Treasury Board did an excellent job really developing that product and updating that product. So one of the things we want to do is ensure people are aware of this product if they're thinking about using automated decision making and some of those key considerations they need to make sure they're thinking through. Like I said, we communicate constantly. We work with people across the program on things like a community of practice to make sure people understand, some of, the key things that are happening across the organization. We do coordination, prioritization, and then the oversight. In terms of making sure that we're aware of what's happening. And again, none of this is a fait accompli. Is an ongoing process, and we go back, we tweak, we keep working on it to make sure that we get to that ideal state that we're seeking. But it's an ongoing process of evolution. It's not a one-day thing. And like I said, it's a journey. It's a journey of improvement, everyday improvement. I talked about the Enterprise Data Stewardship Network. I really enjoy those meetings because that's where you see people across the organization, all with a shared interest around really leveraging data in different ways, coming from different perspectives, and really, really looking to push in terms of our data use across the organization. So for example, we have experts on the IT side, the IM side, privacy, legal, audit and evaluation. And then we also have the business and program membership. In these working groups, we talk about so many things, but one of the core things we've done is group some of the priorities. For example, we have an information sharing agreement working group, census data working group. I talked about our colleagues in Statistics Canada. They're producing excellent data sets. And one of the things we've done is make sure that we have an inventory of these data sets so people can go and refer to them when in a very easy way, as opposed to searching and not being able to find it when they're in an urgent need for some of these numbers. We also have things like the data inventory recommendations that will be coming forward through governance, accessing things like Statistics Canada's microdata. We were able to put together things like an HR data sharing protocol. I know in a lot of organizations, there's a lot of confusion over what you can do and you can't do with HR data. So we've been really working through making sure that we understand these parameters, working with our privacy counterparts, our HR counterparts, and making sure that we've documented this so that people can use and leverage this in a way that's safe and secure. I'll jump to the next slide. So culture. One of the things I hear from everybody and in lots of surveys is culture is one of the biggest barriers to implementing a data strategy. So one of the things we've isolated the culture problem to be is a mix in terms of the literacy issue. And when I say literacy from all angles, you can be a data expert and still have issues with data literacy, because data is so horizontal and touches so many aspects. So it's important for us to be constantly sending the message around the significance and importance of data literacy at all levels across the organization. So like I said, we've worked things like really putting together that policy. Our data literacy program is really focused on the upskilling, reskilling, retention of people with data expertise within the organization, and really getting stakeholders to contribute to some of this work we're doing on data literacy. The other piece, people often think data is all about technology or it's all about numbers. I would say that data has a significant piece around collaboration, partnership, understanding the context of where you are. So we make sure that we're really engaged and building those partnerships, not just within the organization, but also externally to the organization, to make sure that we're keeping informed about the current context and making sure that we're incorporating this context into everything we do. The other piece around culture where people always talk about is oftentimes the data strategy is not aligned with what's happening across the organization. So we do a lot of work in terms of, like I said, ensuring we have a community of practice where people can actually come and talk about what they're doing with data, what's happening, what are the urgencies, what are the priorities they have, and they can actually have informal exchanges in terms of data and some of the challenges we're facing as we think of new technologies like generative AI. So I know some of you might be asking me, so what next? What are you doing next? So a lot of our focus right now for this year is on the data foundation platform, like really making sure we get that core infrastructure into full execution. We're making a lot of good progress, which makes me happy. The other piece is really looking at working with our programs to respond to some of the findings around how we measure uptake rates, how we communicate, how we reach Canadians across this country using data, and then a lot of the basically just looking at how we can tell stories with data, enhancing how we're using visualizations on data to tell that data story, the result story, the program story. Lots of excellent work happening across ESDC. So how do we communicate that in a way that's effective using data? The other piece that we're focused on is also the investment in employees and really enabling the support people need in terms of data to do their work. Talked about the data literacy program, enhancing that data governance process and tools, and really pushing on the responsible and ethical use of emerging tools like emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, because we really believe that there are some good things you can do with AI, but if you don't have the right boundaries, it can cause some significant harm to populations. So we want to make sure that we're balancing the value and the risk in everything we do. We will continue to work with our colleagues all across the public service, to make sure that we're aligned on things like the Government of Canada's data strategy, penned by PCO, TBS, and Statistics Canada, looking at some of the modernization initiatives that are going on, the GC Digital Ambition, and just making sure that we're all rowing in the same direction and sharing information and just helping everybody across government mature on this data journey that we're on. So what I'll do is I will pause here, and I'll pass it to Robert. Thank you, and looking forward to questions that people might have.
You definitely have questions. Thank you very much, Ema. That was great. Resonated, anyways, many, many times. I'll give you a quick first question. What we're going to do is take a look what tools were leveraged to identify, track, share, and manage data inventory, data catalogs.
We use a lot of tools, but we can. I prefer to take that question offline.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Curtis, you can take that offline. Okay. Just send an email to Assistant Deputy Minister Okonny. Okay, that's wonderful. That's great news. Thank you. Okay. From Anonymous, congratulations on the ADM.
Oh, thank you.
And in terms of ushering in a data culture change at ESDC, to what extent do you foresee the elevation of the CDO role in helping the whole of ESDC to adopt a data-related best practices and to think more in terms of enterprise?
That's a really, really, really good question. The way I see it, I always saw my role as that, Robert, like I always saw my role as Chief Data Officer as helping push the enterprise, to an increased data maturity. And somebody reminded me that 6 years ago, when I was on at the Government of Canada Data Conference, I actually said, for your data strategy to work across the organization, you need a clear leadership, top leadership support. So he found it interesting that now I'm an ADM and I'm in ESDC for data. So I think what it does is it helps with the signal that senior management is taking this seriously, and it's centered and it's core to what we do. So I think it helps with the signaling in terms of saying, this is an important and it's becoming more important. Like you can look at what's happening in terms of technology. It's advancing fast, and people are leveraging data in good ways and in bad ways. So it's extremely important that that tone from the top is set in terms of saying this is important. And the other thing it does is it also helps put me at some of the important tables where conversations are happening about some of the program and policy changes coming. Because one of the things I've seen in the last 23 years in data is being at the table at the right point is so important in terms of influencing some of the enhancements that can happen and really leveraging data at the right time. So I think that also helps. I can talk a lot more about this too, but again, if you want to dig into that, we can talk about it offline.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. No, I think I think the concept of being at the table is absolutely critical. It makes a big difference. We've got another one. Reference your work at ESDC. What do you think is one of the most pressing issues that you find working at ESDC to mature the ESDC data posture?
I would say my view is two main things. We have to get the data foundation right. I know a lot of people are talking about AI right now, but given that we're supposed to serve all Canadians across this country, it is extremely important for us to get that data foundation piece right, making sure we're putting those key considerations around security, privacy, legal, ethical considerations, because that will help us go faster in terms of how we're delivering services and how we're thinking about those populations that we need to reach. The other piece is the data literacy piece. I think to push that data literacy piece across the organization in a way that people understand that data is not just for the CDO or people who study math or people who study computer science. It's for everybody, and it's becoming more real. If you look at what's happening with ChatGPT and some of the use and misuse of some of those tools, it's extremely important for people to understand those key considerations around how they use data. So I would say those are the two things that I think we would need to really focus on in the next year.
Great. The next question, actually, I like the point you made about math or computer science. When you're dealing with data quality, it's a function of the business people.
Exactly.
They don't know that a person lives at this address. It's up to the business people to ascertain that the person's not 1900 years old, as was in the previous presentation in Estonia when they were doing checking out their data. Also, there's the issue of data structure. That's more of a technical thing, okay? But the data quality, that's 99% business.
Exactly.
Okay, for that. So the question is, how would you recommend people who don't have a math or computer science major to essentially upgrade themselves and work in the data science career path?
Oh, in my team, so we have a chief data office in ESDC with over about 140 people, and not all of them are mathematicians or computer scientists. We actually need people with multidisciplinary backgrounds because, like I was saying, so it's not just a technical piece of coding or putting together new methodologies. It's also some of those ethical considerations and being able to collaborate and reach across the aisle and talk to different people and bring, those pieces into the data and the work we do. So again, it's not just the pure coding in Python or pure coding in SQL. I have people who can script thousands of lines in SQL. They're the best. But I also have people who can come to me and say, Ima, this technology, the way it's leveraging data is going to introduce significant harm. So maybe we need to kind of take a pause and review some of these things. So we also need people with all kinds of skills in terms of how we look at this data and how we look at some of these advanced technologies that are leveraging data. So one of the things I would say is do not narrow your path and do not limit yourself in terms of the career in data. It's very, very broad, and it's going to get broader. I always tell people in legal, I said, if I were a lawyer right now, I would be digging on what's happening in terms of some of these tools that leverage data, because there's a whole new world that's opening up there too. So again, like I said, don't limit yourself in terms of the your educational background. There's a lot of potential and a lot you can look into in the field of data.
Last year we had people in the information sciences, and they're converting librarians who are not data literate, but
Yeah.
basically understanding the basics in data science, and it's moving along. The universities are definitely addressing that, and many of the fields, like Professor Amiot yesterday talked about, was that their digital transformation and innovation is multidisciplinary.
Exactly.
And you don't need to have a math or computer science background for that. So anyways, whatever, hopefully that was a good answer there, Ima. How does ESDC address the authorized disposition of data of business value?
So for this question, usually I would let my IAM colleagues lead on that in terms of disposition of data and the policies around that. So I would probably defer that question because I don't want to put words into my IAM colleagues' mouth.
Okay, no, fair enough. We got another question: is there sort of a CDO council at the government level?
Yes, there is.
Okay, so what essentially you're basically working across government in that particular area. Steve Burt chairing that. He's the new CDO.
So it used to be Steve Burt. Now it's Chris Allison, and Cara Beckles. So so yeah, PCO, basically PCO and public health agency CDOs.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, good. So that answers that, Rosalie. Yeah, there was just a comment. I don't know if you want to answer this or not. Is that how are you able to elevate the CDO position to an ADM level? Because another organization, the role is still buried under the CIO, CTO at the EX1 level or so. I don't know if you want to answer that question or not.
We can have a long conversation about that offline. The one thing I would say is within ESDC, we have an excellent chief information officer and chief privacy officer and chief security officer and excellent DMs and ADMs, and they all understand the significance and importance of data to service to Canadians, and given the size and scope of what we do, it's something that was decided upon, but we can have further conversations about it.
Okay, oh, fair enough. Many people, it is being elevated finally, to having people around the table. For that. Does the data strategy include sharing data at the provincial government level as well?
Oh, yes. We share a lot of data at the provincial level, and we actually have a lot of work happening in terms of the information sharing agreement. We have a whole repository. ESDC has thousands of data sharing agreements. So we have a repository where all that is stored in terms of some of those agreements, and we continue to iterate and work on those. So yes, it's part of the data strategy.
Great, thank you. And last question, in your new role, will you be covering all of ESDC? And would that include the labor program and Service Canada and labor market agreements and all that sort of stuff? Go ahead, please.
Yes, so the key thing is that we work across with the program. So we make sure that this is, again, to what I've said, data is for everybody. It's not just a CDO job. So the key is that we work across, we work with labor program, we work with Service Canada to make sure that we're connected and enabling what they need to do to really push on where they need to go, get them as fast as they need to get. So it's not just CDO doing everything, it's CDO working across the organization, enabling and making sure things are happening.
Okay, great. And yeah, and I think the concept of stewardship is now taking hold where people don't own data. They're stewarding and maintaining the quality.
Exactly.
I think that's a major effort. Well, this will conclude this session. Thank you ever so much, Ima, for coming out again and presenting. Your presentations were great, and it's great seeing you go on this journey.
Yes, I feel I'm on a journey with you, Robert, because I keep like every year. Now it's the third year.
No, I know. I think it's wonderful, and and the like. And it's very encouraging to see this finally taking hold. And like people like you are basically taking, taking the bull by the horn, so to speak, and basically addressing the issues. And there are many. Yeah. So I would like to thank everybody for attending and Emma for presenting. I just want to quickly go through this afternoon session. We have from the Office of the United Kingdom equivalent of the Office of the Auditor General, Yvonne Gallagher is going to be presenting at 12:30. And sorry, I apologize. I got to get the right day right. Sorry. We've got Julie Champagne. Okay, she's the CDO for the Bank of Canada, going to be presenting on managing data in a large government department. CDO leadership role in digital transformation. And then we're going to have Eric Sweden, and he's going to be giving a much more what we call provincial government perspective, but it's going to be talking about the state IMIT priorities for digital transformation. And he's talking about the 50 states in the United States. And NASCIO is the National Association of State CIOs, where they get together and share information with respect to that. Then we got James Denford presenting on the global assessment of AI policies. Denis Suzar from the United Nations talking about the UN e-government survey overview. We've got Stenio Fernandez, Dr. Stenio Fernandez talking from the Bank of Canada, talking about digital transformation and innovation value stream. We've got Dorothy Ang speaking. She's the Executive Director for Code for Canada, and she's going to be talking about technology and design for the public good. And then finally, and certainly not last, is Sahir Nazami Tafreshi. She's the Senior Director for Analytics and Insights at the Bank of Canada, and she's going to be talking about establishing an analytics strategy and practice. And that's going to be followed by Eric Belladis, who's going to be he's a Director of Analytics and Decision Support, and he's going to be talking about data fluency at the Bank of Canada, a learner-centric approach. And I think this is something that all agencies and departments are having to contend with: data fluency, data migration. And that's a role to having effective data management within the organization. So I thank you all for attending, and I hope to see you in the afternoon for the sessions. Thank you. Cheers.